I've been in one workplace in the John Keys Group for 26 years and with Informate since its inception 18 years ago. So, having a stable role, stable company is quite unusual these days when a lot of young people make quick moves. At this point in the country, where what we are facing, the challenges, it's an opportunity to serve. It's an opportunity to contribute, to make a difference to Sri Lankan society and the economy. So I embraced it with the idea of service, of being able to contribute something and taking it as an opportunity to make a difference.
Hi there, and welcome to the Learning Curve, Snap Ark Global's podcast, where we take you through practical insights from experts from various industries. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Jehan Perinpanayagam, CEO of Infomate, Chairman SLASSCOM, and Chairman ACCA Member Network Panel. Jehan, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Jashan.
I would like to start off by addressing some of the multiple hats that you wear on your day to day. Like I mentioned in the introduction, you are Chairman SLASSCOM, Chairman ACCA Member Network Panel, and the CEO of Informate. Could you maybe talk a little bit about your career and how you progressed to where you are today?
Thank you for that question. So, my career today would be viewed as unorthodox because I've been in one workplace in the John Keys Group for 26 years and with Informate since its inception 18 years ago. So having a stable role, stable company is quite unusual these days when a lot of young people make quick moves. So that's something I think I got from my late father. He was a government servant for many years, and I think that rubbed off on me, the sense of loyalty, sense of service, sense of duty. So that is on the John Keels aspect. Now, the roles that I've taken in industry are things I must tell you that I never aspired to. In fact, when those were offered to me, my first reaction was to turn it down, to refuse, and to put forward various reasons, time, and also it was not roles that came naturally to me because I'm not someone who is very comfortable in front of audiences. I tend to avoid the limelight. But somehow these situations conspired, so to speak, for these roles really to, I had to accept them, and I'm very glad that I did. Because what came to my mind at this point in the country, where what we are facing, the challenges, it's an opportunity to serve. It's an opportunity to contribute, to make a difference to Sri Lankan society and the economy. So I really believe in a higher call and a higher purpose, and I felt that there was a purpose, there was a specific reason for this opportunity. So I embraced it with the idea of service, of being able to contribute something and taking it as an opportunity to make a difference. Now, how to balance these different roles is challenging, but I think a few things that really help me is good teams. So, a great team at Informate. We have supportive bosses within the John Keys Group, great team at SLASSCOM and ACCA. So, you are able to then delegate certain tasks and able to manage. Multitasking is an important skill. Being organized and being able to handle multiple things is also something that will help. And also, it's time bound. I don't think I can manage this for a length of time, but these are SLASSCOM role is for 1 year and the ACCA role is for 2 years. So it's time bound and it's an opportunity to give as much as you can during that period.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned also about having a time-bound role. Right now, since all three are sort of merging together, how do you sort of view your work-life balance, things at home with your family and also work? Where are the boundaries that you draw in the work that you do?
So definitely it is challenging. I mean, take on three major roles at the same time. I have few other roles also. I'm also the president of the Sri Lanka Nordic Business Council. Have a family with kids, 3 kids. Take on different roles in the church. So definitely it is challenging. But a few things you try to do. Try to keep the weekends for yourself. The other aspect is try to grab small portions of time in between to clear some emails. You need to become adept at using time well. Setting some morning routines, for instance, quick catch up, for instance, with maybe the executive director of SLASSCOM every morning to go through some of the pending items, scheduling meetings a month ahead. These are things that can help you. You need to be able to definitely put in additional hours, right? But I think there is always, if you are well planned and if you are disciplined, there is always an opportunity for balance. I think things like family, health are things that must not suffer in this whole journey.
Especially in this culture where everyone is gearing towards hustling and doing as many things as they can. I think leading to burnout is also a very realistic possibility. So it's great that you mentioned that setting aside time for your own health and your family's health. That's also an important point.
Very important. I think people are much more aware now of self-care, routines of health, of maybe exercise on a regular basis. Make sure that you do your checkups on a regular basis. That's what I would also advocate for every young person, from the age of 20. Make sure you do your annual checkups. And also, some time with friends. If you play a game, I've started playing a bit of tennis over the weekends. These are good things that help to keep you recharged, keep you energetic, and prevents burnout, as you said.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your work as CEO at Infomate. Infomate, which is part of the John Keells Group, is in the BPO sector. If you could just elaborate a little bit about what the sector is, what sort of work happens, and maybe perhaps the challenges that you've experienced in this past decade or more of running the company.
Sure, great question. So BPO stands for Business Process Outsourcing. Today it's called BPM, Business Process Management. There are other terms used like global services that have now come into play these days. It was an industry that emerged after the internet. So it was the internet that really facilitated and it enabled work from different parts of the world, US, Europe, to move to our part of the world electronically. If you have a document, a supply invoice, for instance, that can now be scanned, and you can have a person who is equally skilled, having the same set of skills, sitting in India or Sri Lanka and being able to carry out the same task. That is what the internet enables. So any type of work could be outsourced. What fueled the outsourcing industry was two things. One is access to talent, resources. For instance, if you had a shortage of accountants in a particular place, why not work with a country that had abundant supply of accountants? The other aspect is cost. Rather than paying a large wage in USD, if you can get it done for 1/3 in Sri Lanka, India, or Philippines, why not leverage the arbitrage? Right? So those were factors, access to talent, costs that fuel this industry. And today it has become a global phenomenon. So it's a very large industry going into several billions of dollars and continues to grow, right? Double-digit growth. India has been hugely successful in this. Philippines has now been a late entrant doing extremely well. So some of the types of work being outsourced, and it's a broad scope. It could be call center outsourcing. A lot of the banks, insurance companies outsource their call centers, and these people are trained to speak in the same accent. They are trained in the weather patterns so that they can really speak like the clients that they serve. They can really connect with them. It could be accounting, and that's the type of work that we essentially specialize in, outsourced accounting. It's called finance and accounting outsourcing industry, where you have your accounts payable, your bookkeeping, general ledger, bank reconciliations outsourced to another destination that can do it better and at a lower cost. You can even have medical reports. For instance, there are lots of companies that outsource the X-ray reading. Overnight, it is sent to a doctor in India, who would then give the report and then send the report back to the doctor in the US. You can have architectural drawings, you can have legal agreement drafting, you can have legal conveyancing, you can have architectural drawings, you can have data entry, shipping documentation. The scope is very, very vast. And all of the investment research can be done. So Sri Lanka has the opportunity to really grow in this. I must mention that the IT and the BPM industry goes together. So this industry is known as the IT BPM industry, right? Because both leverage technology. And Sri Lanka, currently, the state of the industry, we're about 144,000 people working in the IT BPM industry. It's the third largest export revenue earning industry. So it's about $1.7 billion in export revenue.
Amazing. Yeah.
And the goal is to be $5 billion by 2030.
Right.
India, to give you an idea of scale, employs 5 million plus people in the industry, and it's something like $194 billion in exports.
Right.
So there is a huge potential for Sri Lanka to scale this up. I think we have not achieved our full potential. It's a great industry for young people.
Yeah. Since you mentioned that this was one of the industries that really came because of the internet, technology obviously plays a huge role. With the advancements in AI and how that is, in a sense, trying to replace a lot of jobs, do you see there being a convergence or there being an overtaking at some point?
Absolutely. So BPM industry is increasingly being integrated with technology. So it's no longer BPM as a standalone service. It is being closely embedded with technology. Yeah. So some of the technologies that are today playing a key role, AI, as you said, RPA, robotic process automation, and machine learning. So with time, some of the lower skilled components of the BPM industry will get replaced by technology. So you are no longer then replacing, for instance, a US role with a person in India or Sri Lanka, but you can replace that role with a bot potentially.
Yeah.
Right, with an AI-enabled bot that can do a lot of the tasks. So the way forward for the industry would be to invest in technology. Right, don't let technology replace, but we need to disrupt ourselves, incorporate technology ourselves, and then if there are any benefits, give it back to the client, and also move up the value chain so that we start doing more knowledge intensive services and advisory services adding value to clients, because that component technology can't replace.
I know, from researching a little that Infomate has an advanced level graduate program where they encourage school leavers to sort of enter the industry. What exactly does the program run, and what was the thought process behind establishing it?
Sure. So a little bit about Informate. It's the first shared services in Sri Lanka. It was set up 18 years ago. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of John Keel's. And we were the first shared services center in Sri Lanka. So we started with 60 people. The idea was to centralize the group's accounting of 60 plus subsidiaries under one roof. Right. So we were using the SAP platform, and the vision was, one thing is reduce costs through efficiencies, economies of scale, bring in best practices, bring in automation, bring in standardization across the entire John Keel's group. Right? So we were able to achieve that, but we had bigger aspirations. We wanted to be Sri Lanka's leading BPM. So we started taking on third-party clients. Today, 75% of our revenue is outside the John Keel's group. And we have clients in Australia, in UK, in US, in Sweden, in Norway, Saudi Arabia. So it's a global BPO. We have now grown to 500 plus people. And we are having double-digit growth year on year. So this is a people-driven industry. It's not just machines or equipment. It's people. Right? So what you basically sell to a client, what a client is using, is your human resources. And it's a young industry, so you have a young demographic. And the founder of Informate, the person who conceptualized, his name was Ronnie Piris, who was a group finance director at that time in John Keel's group. He came up with the idea of a finance apprentice program. He said people have just finished advanced levels who have registered for one of the professional accounting qualifications. So they need to be in the range of 18 to 21. Have a 3-year program, structured program, similar to what an audit firm would have, but repurposed for the corporate. So in year 1, they would go through classroom training sessions plus on-the-job programs, on-the-job training. They would work in a real environment. They would have time off for studies, because they are all doing accounting exams. And the end of the 3-year program, the vision was to develop and groom the country's best accountants, so that they would come out with 3 years qualification, 3 years experience, and be fully qualified. And a lot of them have, now we have run about 12 batches.
Wow.
over a period of time, and a lot of them have done extremely well. Some of them have moved up the organization hierarchy within Informate. Several have joined the John Keel's group companies
Right.
and holding managerial positions in several JKH companies. Some have moved overseas and to other companies within Sri Lanka. A lot of them still reach out to me. Very proud of how well they have done. And they speak very fondly of the experience they had at Infomate. They said during their time at Infomate, sometimes it was tough. They found balancing studies and work difficult. They found the training and the hours challenging. But on completion, and when they saw the professionals that they had become, they really understood what this program was able to add to them. So they did some fantastic work. They learned all-round SAP skills. They were able to qualify in their accounting exams, and I think work experience really supports your studies, because you are able to really see in a practical sense the theory that you study and apply some of the theory. And they also had a lot of fun. Right? So it's a creative, energetic team that we have at Informate. A lot going on, from sports to training to CSR activities to sustainability initiatives. They get involved in that. One of the apprentice I remember, there is a segment in the apprentice program called a business unit deployment, where you can be deployed in a business unit of your choice. So you have 60 companies in the John Keel's group. Some of them chose Ceylon Cold Stores, others chose Cinnamon Grand. And this particular girl, she chose one of the Maldivian resorts. So we were not sure. No one had really tried that before. So we asked, and they were very happy to accommodate. The airfares were paid for and accommodation was provided. We have 4 fantastic resorts in the Maldives. So she spent a month there, got involved in a lot of the month-end processes, in transforming some of the processes. And she also had I think an unforgettable experience. Did diving and whale watching and dolphin watching. So that's just one example of what the finance apprentice program soon after the advanced levels could be.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think a lot of companies should ideally strive for an entryway, because what students often learn in school, in universities, and when they come to the field, there's a big learning curve that they have to adapt to quite fast. So managing both, I think, it allows that entryway and smoothens the process a lot better.
Absolutely. And I see the young people today. I was 24 when I started working.
Right.
I first finished my studies and then I started work. But today you have young people by 21. They have 3 years experience.
Already, yeah.
They are qualified. So I see they are far ahead of where I was.
Just to take it back a bit about what you said at the start about how a lot of young people also have this side to them where they don't want to stick in one place for too long. So now these days it's about 2 years at most where most companies can see that sort of commitment. Is that a recurring issue even in the BPM place where that you work? And what are some steps that perhaps we can take to give them that sort of,
So it's a trend that I've increasingly observed both in Informate and also in the industry. So talking to some of the colleagues in the industry, they also face similar challenges. And I think it's something that may be outlier because of what happened last year in terms of the economic challenges.
Right.
These days, a lot of the young people are looking at migrating and greener pastures. So it may be an exception. We are beginning to see it slowing down. So maybe the last year was an exception, but generally, if you look at this trend, has been an increasing one. It's slightly concerning because if you look at some of the other BPO destinations, that trend has become unmanageable. And at some point, it becomes unsustainable even for the companies and for the customers. Now, I was talking to a big UK-based company, and they have centers around the world. He said he still prefers Sri Lanka because there's more stability. Now, he was talking about another destination, a regional country, and he gave the example: you hire 10 people. On day 1, 3 people don't show up.
Wow.
2 weeks later, another 2 have dropped out. And in 3 months, from the original 10, you are left with only 3.
Right.
Now, that is not sustainable. And from a career standpoint also, it's not good, because at some point, it will catch up where people start looking at your CV. And my team does that. over the last 6 years, you've changed 6 times. And that does not look good. So it's the old story of a rolling stone that gathers no moss. You need to spend at least 2 years, especially in the early part of your career. There's a lot to learn. Now, if you look at a company like Informate, being a JKH subgroup, we have a unique training program, which is we call the Informate University program. It covers soft skills, it covers technical skills. You learn SAP, Power BI, AI, RPA. I mean, there's so much to learn and do. Right. If I had that opportunity at this point, I would really take that, the best use of that, rather than completing 8 months and then, because I have a slightly better offer, moving to the next one. So I would really encourage the young listeners here, especially in the early part of your career, be patient and have a long-term view of a career. It's not just the next month or the next year. You must take at least a 5-10 year view of your career. I was listening to Ajit Gunawardena, former deputy chairman of John Keells, and he said as a young professional, he found himself in John Keells not being as well off against some of his peers. He saw some of his friends driving around in cars. He was still in public transport. It took time. He was not getting the same breaks, definitely not the same salaries, remunerations that his colleagues were getting at that time. But fast forward some years, where he is now deputy chairman of John Keells Group, and then chairman of Pick Me and so many other roles. And he says, you compare myself now where I am versus, where my peers are, there is no comparison. Right? So then, is it the long term, right? Or are you looking at the short term? And my former boss, Ronnie Piris, again, he wrote a book called Tough Journey, Great Destination. Tough journey, great destination. Right? So are you willing to put in the effort and the hours now for rewards, much bigger rewards later on? Right? That is what psychologists call delayed gratification. And scientifically, the people who are able to delay gratification have proved much more successful at whatever they do. So that's something I would definitely say is of concern to us at this moment. Attrition is quite high. We believe it will start to slow down, but we would encourage the young people here to take a medium-term view of careers and not be too short-term focused.
Fantastic. Some great insights there, especially if you are, sitting for A levels and considering even studying accounting. To check out this program at Infomate. If I can sort of steer the conversation now to your role as a leader, managing several teams, what are some non-negotiables in your day-to-day that you look forward to checking off? And also to add to that, what are qualities that you look for in others that help you know this person is ready to take on a bigger responsibility?
So I tend to be quite flexible. So over a period of time, I've sort of become quite flexible and adaptable. So there aren't too many non-negotiables in a day. I'm generally able to accommodate different things. But what I would say, things that help definitely is scheduling some of these meetings and discussions well in advance. Having some regular things, for instance, if you look at Informate, regular monthly meetings, management meetings, your finance review meeting, having weekly sales meeting. If you look at SLASSCOM, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I have a early morning connect 7:30 with the executive director. Right. So these meetings are scheduled in advance, so that you have quick check-ins on the different projects, and you are able to really get a status. So that is something that is definitely helpful. Number two is trying to make sure that end of the day that you go through all your emails and messages and try and respond. Over the last couple of weeks, I've probably fallen back a little bit on that, but try to find time to go back and clear some of the backlog, because there was a company that we came into touch with, and now we work for us as a service provider for them. Their managing director said, we try to have it as a standard is that every message is responded to within 24 hours. Wow. And I think that's a good standard to have. I think that's something all young people, something good discipline to try to aspire to. So scheduling some of these regular check-ins, going through your messages and making sure that you respond. The other aspect is keeping notes.
Right.
Right, when you go in for a meeting, if there are some action items, people will tell you different things, right? And sometimes you get inundated with
Yeah.
requests, suggestions. Now these can add to your sort of stress levels, but if you have a system of taking these notes down either on your phone or a notepad and then going back and making sure that these get action, that will definitely help you. Otherwise, sometimes you have a discussion and then someone tells
Yeah.
you something, why don't we do this? And then if it's undone, you lose
Yeah.
credibility, right? So you are going to miss one or two things, and that's human nature. None of us are perfect, but you can get the bulk done, and then people know that you are attending to some of these things. Otherwise, you become like what these people complain about politicians, right? So they'll come and say, lovely things, make promises, and then really
nothing
not
gets done,
not deliver.
Yeah.
And so keeping to commitments is something that we must aspire to. So those would be some of the things in the day. I think I can still get a lot better in some of these things. And if you read some of the great leaders, something I see about all of them, they make an early start, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. They spend time maybe in meditating, getting their thought process aligned, spending time exercising. And I wish I could be that disciplined. I'm still a work in progress, right? So that's the other aspect. We are never perfect.
Yeah.
We can all learn, we can grow, and it's never too late.
Not to be too hard on yourself. Reaching
Absolutely,
perfection.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's an important point. I actually wanted to say that don't aim for perfection. Don't allow great to be the enemy of good.
Right.
Sometimes if you aim for that level of perfection in a document, sometimes it just doesn't get done, right? It gets delayed. You need to balance. Of course, you need to aim for good work, but if you aim for that level of perfection, sometimes you can then compromise on time.
Even
right?
starting a project or
exactly,
anything.
exactly. So that's something I've learned over a period of time, that once you've got something up to a certain point, you can still work with that. Maybe that balance 2 or 3% of fine tuning could then become the enemy of actually getting something out in time.
If I'd like to wrap things up in our conversation that we've been having, Jehan, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with? Something perhaps a mentor taught you some time back, which you still carry with you, or other advice that you'd like to tell?
So keep listening. You can learn from everyone, right? So you talked about mentors. So I was privileged to have great bosses, and I learned from every one of them. I have, I think, 6 bosses over my career. Every one of them has added something to my career, and I've learned from all of them. And you can, if you listen, and if you have a learning attitude and humility, you can learn from everyone, right? So I learned from my kids. I learned from my juniors at office, and you must be willing to listen. Listening is a key skill. Now there are some parts of you that we think that we know it. Sometimes we may have a value system that is very, very dear to us. We have a very strong stand on it. However, with time I've learned this, that sometimes there you can't have a very black and white attitude.
Way of looking things.
There are different aspects to be taken into account, and your view is not always complete or the correct one, right? So being willing to learn, listen, is something that's very important, right? Other aspect is the importance of communication skills. Now, one of my bosses taught me about Toastmasters, and I was quite slow in taking that up. Once I did for a couple of years, that really transformed. Because whatever you do today, I would say that's the number one skill that you require as an entrepreneur, as a corporate employee, as a human being. Whatever you want to pursue, you need to have communication skills. Now, sometimes you might find it a bit unfair in a work situation where you are very good at what you do, but someone else who is more visible, who speaks out more, gets promoted ahead of you. Right? And those are situations that we all experienced. So there's no use complaining that this is unfair or the company is unfair. It's up to us to make yourself visible. And so it's very important to market yourself, and that's not a bad thing. Right? Sometimes as Sri Lankans we think that it's like blowing your own trumpet. That's not the case. Even if you look at the religious text, the Bible, for instance, says if you have a light, put it on a lampstand. Let it give light. Let everyone see it. And that's not wrong. So if you do something good, make sure that it gets noted, that you get the credit for it. Otherwise, someone else will get credit for what you did. And if you don't market yourself, no one will. So invest time in communication skills, in building a personality. That would be 2. So listening, communication skills 3. Make sure that you look after your health, right? I think that's a very important aspect. Today you have young people suddenly succumbing to heart ailments, to non-communicable diseases, and if you lose your health, whatever else you've gained, you are not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to complete your purpose, your mission, what you started. So from a young age, in terms of diet, in terms of getting adequate sleep, exercise, I think that's a hugely important aspect. And finally, your sense of purpose. I think we are all here on this earth for a very short time, right? And I believe that there is a purpose for each one of us. And it would be terrible that we are just a statistic going through life, born and do something and then, so just think about your purpose, what you are passionate about, and make sure that you leave a legacy, that we make a difference, that we contribute something to society, to some cause you are passionate about, and to Sri Lanka. Right? At this moment, we need young people who will stand up and make a difference for the country, not just leave our shows and flee. So I would encourage all of you. You are the next generation. You can build a brand new Sri Lanka. You can do a much better job than we did, and take on the challenge and transform the country.
Thank you so much, Jehan, especially for your time here in joining us at the Learning Curve. Some great insights and learnings to take back with us. You can always follow Jehan Perinpanayagam on LinkedIn. I know he's very active there. You can give him a follow and see what he's doing on the day-to-day. From all of us here at Snap Ark's global podcast, The Learning Curve, just want to thank our viewers for joining us on this week's episode. Stay tuned for more. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Jashan, and thank you all. All the best.